Ryan, we've got a business problem, a pickle that somebody's written into us with, and the listener is John, and he is starting his own company, which is really good. John, really exciting journey. He's got this really good idea. I'm not going to get into the product or service that he's looking to sell, but the heart of his question is this, which is how can he get other people to sell his product for him? Okay. So, there's obviously direct sales and, over the web and sales reps and all those other usual things. But his question is what other channels are there that he can use to get other people to sell his product and service? And I thought this would be an interesting one to get into and to list down the various different ways. Make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So we've broken this down into a list of 8 different areas. Okay, and we're going to try to give you some examples of each of these as we go as well.
So before we get into the list, Colin, do you mind if I jump in here?
Sure.
So I always encourage people to think about any marketing tactic, including your sales channel, to think about these things strategically, to think about what is it that you want to get out of this. So, for example, when you're communicating, when you're advertising, there are different goals that you can have for your communication. So you can seek to increase awareness, just let people know that you exist or remind them that you exist. You can have an education campaign where you want to train them on some new way of doing things, or you can have a persuasion campaign where you're really trying to convince them that your offering is better than some other offerings that are out there. It's nice to say, oh, well, we'll just do all of those things at once. But the reality is that it's difficult to do all of those things with a single communications campaign.
Sure.
I think it's a similar idea here. So I love the list that you've come up with, all these indirect sales techniques. But I would encourage John and any other listeners out there to think about what their goals are. What are their strategic needs? Is it, if you're a brand new company, that the most important thing is that the most people hear about you, like starting off? Is that what you need? Do you need a broad awareness campaign? Well, certain of these indirect sales techniques are going to be better at that than others. Alternatively, is this a very new product, like a new type of offering? Do you need people to get some training on this to kind of understand what it is?
Yeah.
That's an education campaign. Again, that's going to work better for some of these channels than others. Is this a persuasion situation where people are going to really need a reason to believe that your offering is better than other things that they could get out there? You're going to need, somebody with credibility delivering your message, somebody that people trust. Again, some of these channels are going to be better at that than others. So before we dig in and go through the list, I'll encourage our listeners to think about that. Like, what are your goals? What are your needs as a firm? Because some of these are going to be great for you and some of them are going to be terrible for you.
Yeah.
But it's because it's for you. Like, what is your need?
Yes. No, that's a very good point. And I guess I'd build on top of that as well is how do these fit into the brand?
Yes.
So what brand are you looking to create, and do these because some of these, I think, for me, are diametrically opposite to the brand that you may be trying to create. And let me say, I've had my own company now since 2002, so a number of years. And I've gone down.
I don't think we didn't all just see you avoid math, Colin, but go
ahead. I had to actually take a step back and thought, what year are we in? I can't remember what year we're in, but a long time. So each of these areas, I've also given some personal thought to go in, and a couple of these areas, particularly the first one, which is affiliated marketing, I've avoided. And I've avoided it for reasons of wanting to be independent. So I guess the headline here is think about it strategically. Absolutely what Ryan's just saying, but also think about the type of brand that you're trying to create. And I think we did a podcast a little while ago, didn't we, about how to create your brand if you're starting off your own company. So maybe we'll put that link in the show notes to people. So let's crack on, and I've already said the first area is affiliated marketing. Okay, so affiliated marketing is effectively where somebody sells your product for you. So you hear people, so you basically offer that organization a cut it could be we turn around and say, hey, come and buy a wonderful this pen that we've got is from this company, is really great, and there's a link in the show notes. This is all fictitious, by the way. There's a link in the show notes, and if you go through to that, and you can buy this wonderful pen, and we would then get a cut of, if you went ahead and bought that, then we would get a cut of that pen. All right. So that's a good way of doing things. If your product is more of a volume type product, or actually the opposite end to a certain extent, you can actually get some. If you think that there is a company that has got some. And consulting companies, this is one of the areas where we have been approached by many different organizations to effectively sell their product for them. And why are they coming to us? Because they know that we've got the contacts, and they know that and particularly in the high value areas, they believe that particularly, and this particularly applies for us, with things like journey mapping software and various different things like that. We've been approached to work with organizations in the past. I hasten to add, we've always said no. And that it goes back to that sort of strategic bit and that planning bit, which was about the brand, which is the reason we've always said no to this. It is because we value our independence. And we don't want to be turning around and saying, buy this system as opposed to buy that system, because we actually would just like to be saying to our clients, you need some, we would recommend you need some journey mapping software or whatever it may be. And, but we're not experts in this because we're trying to be focused on what we do well. And not try to push something to a client that they may not want and may not be the best for them, to be totally honest with you.
So let me tie what you just said back to the earlier point. So from your perspective as a consulting firm for Beyond Philosophy, part of the value proposition that you're offering is independence, right? You wanted to maintain that because it's something that your clients would value. They know that they can trust you and your recommendations. From the perspective of the firm selling the software, the reason that they wanted to partner with you is because of your credibility, right? So you have contacts, but then you also have credibility. And so they would be using you, assuming you were willing to do that, for awareness, maybe, but mostly for credibility. And so affiliate marketing can be a way of pushing this kind of persuasion message.
Yes.
There's other types of affiliate marketing, though, that are mostly about awareness. I saw an Instagram video just a few days ago where somebody was promoting like a kind of a DIY business model. By the way, if you're getting your business models from Instagram Reels, probably not the best. But this is,
you talk about credibility.
This is a passive income strategy where you just go on Amazon and become an affiliate marketer for them, and then you find links to products that sell for a lot of money, and then you create a Pinterest board, and then you just include all these things in there, and then if anybody's on your Pinterest board and then clicks through to buy that thing, then you get some money as an affiliate.
Yeah,
that's offering no credibility at all, right? This is an anonymous person who created a Pinterest board that's mostly going to be full of stuff from Amazon, but it might work for awareness, right?
Yeah.
And so affiliate marketing can serve multiple aims. Again, what is your goal? And then that's going to determine what type of affiliate marketing plan you would engage in and how you do that.
Yes. No, absolutely. So let's get on to number two, because number two is sort of similar-ish to affiliated marketing, but it's referral programs. So the example I would give here is we get a thing called we get some frozen meals delivered to our house that are basically all plants. Okay. And we're constantly being asked to refer our friends for 20 quid or, $25 or whatever it may be. And
Did you write back to them and let them know that vegetarians don't have friends?
They don't. Yeah. Well, they do. They have lots of cows and people and sheep.
I guess that's true.
But it's the classic referral program. And I think for me, the same thing applies. Yeah. So they're trying to use, obviously, your contacts, your knowledge. They're trying to spread their message, and they're trying to use the credibility because they know that if I turn around to them and say, hey, this is good and we have this, et cetera, and again, from our business perspective, we've had people that have asked us to do referrals to them. And again, we've not done that for the same reason. So I think referral programs, again, and let me be clear, I'm not knocking any of these.
Yeah. No, of course.
At all. Okay.
Yep.
These work, but it goes back to your very good point at the very beginning, Ryan, which is it's got to be done in the right place for the right reason. And John, you if you can get, and this actually comes onto the third area, actually, which is influencer marketing. Okay. And this is obviously something that's grown up over the last few years. If you take a step back and you go, well, hold on, we're trying to sell these vegetarian products to this group of people, then who are the key influences in that area? Because actually, if you can get them to turn around and say this is absolutely wonderful because they've got the credibility, then you are using those influencers to sell your product and service for you. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yep.
So influencer marketing is the third area. The fourth area, which I think starts to get into some really interesting parts, because this is where you start getting into the sort of business to business area, is where you're co-branding with people. Okay. And some examples of this that I would give would be Nike and Apple. Yeah. So that, where you're starting to see both brands very sort of close together. The other one I was thinking about as I was preparing for this is Intel Inside. Yeah. And when you think about, if you think about Intel, I think it's an interesting case study because the reality is that most people didn't realize what, that Intel could be anybody. So forget the whole campaign for the moment. If the campaign didn't exist, most people wouldn't have a bloody clue what processor was in the unit and would have placed no value on it.
Even after the campaign, people have no idea what a microprocessor is or what it does. They just know that Intel means it's good.
Yeah, unless you're a bit of a nerd like me and you go, well, that's what so-and-so megahertz. That's interesting. That's, and that one's a bit better. And look, from the Apple side, now got the M1 and the M2 and the M3 and all different processor speeds. But I realize I'm in a different segment of the market to you, right? Exactly. But what they clearly did was they recognized that whilst they may still be selling their processor to IBM and whoever it was at the very beginning, that they needed to co-brand it to provide some value. Otherwise, they would just be a commodity. So that's where they started to, put the stickers on and come up with the audio branding, et cetera, et cetera. So, when you're co-branding a product, that can absolutely be really powerful as well.
Yeah. And again, think to the motivations of the multiple players involved. So, you're looking for collaborators here. And if you want them to be on board, they need to be getting something out of this. So For
Yeah.
affiliate marketing and for referral programs, you're influencing people by paying them essentially or offering them discounts. Or
Sure.
for co-branding, it's a different story. Usually, there's some kind of revenue sharing that comes out of that. But for usually there's like a major brand and a minor brand in a co-branding, and so usually the minor brand is getting reach right out of the larger
Sure.
brand, and the larger brand is getting something, and it's usually
Sure.
some form of like credibility or coolness. Or so
Yes.
like one co-branding example that I like is that Ford put out an Eddie Bauer edition of the Ford Explorer. So this
Yes.
is the Ford Explorer where like the trim colors and the interior design was done by the clothing designer Eddie Bauer.
Yes.
And it made Ford kind of cooler and more outdoorsy and rugged. And so Ford
Yes.
was getting coolness, Eddie Bauer was getting reach and exposure. They both were getting, but you need to know what both players are getting before you try to engage in a co-branding strategy.
Yeah, and I think that it goes back to it, doesn't it? Because it's that credibility because each brand needs to be credible. So
Yes,
you can imagine Ford doing a co-branding with Bert Scroggins.
sure.
Yeah, that well-known person, Bert
Yeah.
Scroggins,
The Scroggins
and
Mobile. Sure. We've all heard of that. Uh-huh.
but the point is, John, unfortunately, you're not going to be able to do a deal with the Apples or the Nikes or the Fords or whoever in this world because, unfortunately, mate, you don't have the credibility yet to be able to do that. So each of the brands have got to get something out of it, and I for me, ideally, it's attacking a slightly different market. And the reason you're co-branding is because you're in an adjacent marketplace and maybe there's a little bit of overlap between the two. But actually, it's, one and one doesn't make two, it makes three. Yeah,
Yes.
in that co-branding. And that's the important aspect of it. So co-branding is number 4. Number 5, John, are joint ventures. And joint ventures are different to co-branding, and probably one of the joint ventures that I remember coming from the telecom industry is Sony and Ericsson. Yeah, and they see that the mobile phone is starting to the smartphone was starting to really take hold. They needed to respond, so they started to, the two of them got together and created Sony Ericsson. Okay. On the negative side of things, if you think back to the AOL and Time Warner joint venture, yeah, then you go, what a nightmare that was. The money that was wasted there. And I've worked in organizations where you've set up where in telecoms, the company will remain nameless, but we set up a joint venture. We actually went and told all of our leading clients that they were going to move to this joint venture company, and then it wasn't approved. And so we had to then go and tell them that they're not moving to this company. They're going to be staying with the two individual companies. So the key thing I learned from that was just the level of disruption that caused, and then the internal focus that caused. So actually, starting to try to work out, who's going to do what, where, in which marketplace. The top level joining of the two companies was a good idea. The actual implementation of it was a nightmare, basically.
Yeah.
Um,
Let me weigh in on the joint venture thing real quick.
yeah,
So one of the differences between co-branding and joint ventures is kind of the level of integration.
yeah,
So for co-branding, a lot of times there's still a dominant product. Like the Eddie Bauer edition of the Ford Explorer was a Ford Explorer. It just had a little, right,
sure,
and like the Intel Inside sticker was still going onto an IBM laptop or an
yeah,
HP computer.
yeah,
And so to John's point, like that's going to be hard for a startup. It's going to be hard for a joint venture to say, "Hey, here's a brand that doesn't exist yet, but you should partner with me."
Sure.
No brand is going to get anything out of that. Joint ventures, on the other hand, excuse me. Joint ventures, on the other hand, require some kind of expertise, right? So something that you are bringing to the table from a business perspective, and it is possible that startups can't. Excuse me.
That's right.
And it is possible that startups can be in a position to bring something to the table there. So if you are offering something that's really innovative, if you have some expertise that an existing brand doesn't have, it is possible, not easy, but it is still possible for you as a startup to engage in a joint venture where a co-branding thing might require a more established brand on your part.
Yeah, and I think the other thing I'd say is, because we're talking here about large organizations, okay? And the reason we're doing that is to, so people can try to relate to what we're saying, okay? The same principle applies,
Yes.
Even in a small business environment. Yeah,
Yes.
You can turn around, John, and say, well, actually, I am going to set up a joint venture. I'm bringing this to the party. They're bringing that to the party. And we're going to set up a joint venture, and it's going to be called that. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
Your
typically
point, with another small business.
Yeah,
your hometown. Yeah.
Absolutely. So the same principles apply. Number 5 is sponsorship. So again, from a big perspective, whether it's sponsoring the local soccer team at their stadium, whether it's shirts, whether it's sponsoring events or whatever it may be, or even again, go down to the customer experience industry, you get lots of the software companies sponsoring conferences, etc., etc. But you're getting somebody else. You're paying somebody else to effectively advertise your product, and they are lending you, which I think is a good way of describing it. They're lending you their credibility as well. Yeah. So sponsoring things in some way.
Yeah, it tends to be real effective for awareness campaigns, and there can be kind of emotional spillover, right? If you're sponsoring a sports club that people like, then they'll tend to like you a little bit more because of that. But it's not a great persuasive tool. If you see a bunch of people wearing the shirts with your logo on it, that'll make them aware that you exist.
Yes.
And so therefore they might be more willing to kind of believe you're an actual company and so on. So if that's your goal, that's great. But it's not as good on education and persuasion.
No, absolutely. I mean, I can't remember the sponsor's name now, but I remember over here, Manchester United sponsored one of I think it was an insurance company, if my memory serves me correctly, and I'd never heard of them. But the reason that they did it was for the global recognition. And therefore you went, I don't know who they are. And that sort of then led you down to a different track. And importantly, that was then backed up with other campaigns and advertising and everything else that went into it. So it went into an overall plan.
My son's high school tennis team has local restaurants and businesses that have sponsored the court, and they have their banners all around.
Yeah.
And that's a very minor example, but there are a lot of businesses that I heard about for the first time, sitting around the tennis court watching my kids play.
No, absolutely. Okay, the 7th one is testimonials and reviews. So asking somebody to give a testimonial or review. We do that on this podcast. And if you haven't done a testimonial or a review, that would be absolutely wonderful if you could.
Oh, that was nice, Colin. Always be closing. Always be closing.
But, again, you are getting somebody else to sell your product for you. Okay, by somebody writing a review, they're obviously saying that hopefully they think it's good, and therefore other people look at that, and we all know about reviews. And the last area, number 8, is strategic partnerships. So again, these are different to sort of those joint ventures and the co-branding. But if you've got a strategic partnership, it's a bit like, and the example I always like here is Spotify and Starbucks. So, you can actually download playlists that Starbucks have been using. You can actually, then that sponsorship, that sort of strategic partnership started in 2015. It's not a joint venture. It's not a formal thing. But the two parties are gaining something out of it. It's in a similar environment. They're not clearly competing at all. From Starbucks' perspective, is adding to the experience that they're creating, the ambience and all those other wonderful things. And I guess that's a really important thing. And this is something that goes back to I've talked about in the past. I'm a great believer in the Stephen Covey, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And the reason I mention that is because all of these need to be a win-win.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And I think that is probably my biggest bit of advice, to be honest, John. That I have been over the 21 years that I've been doing this. See how I did the maths really quickly?
Yeah, that was
21 years.
Really quickly, like 20 minutes after you mentioned. Yeah. Super quick.
Hold on. Let me. Where's my calculator? Is it?
Yeah, I know you got a pad full of paper there that you've been working on that for the last 20 minutes.
It is, yeah. But over the 21 years that I've been doing this, all of these, I've either personally looked into all of these or had people approach me about some of these. Okay. The issue is, and the Stephen Covey connection is it a win-win? Yeah. And all too often, when organizations are approaching me, it's a win-lose. In other words, they win, I lose. Yeah. And you've got to make it a win-win and provide the backup and the go into it with that mentality. I think is the important aspect.
No, I think that's the key takeaway for all of these. So I hope that this list opened people's minds to the possibilities. There's lots of interesting ways that you can do things. You can try combining some of these ideas. But ultimately, if you want this to work, everybody involved needs to get something out of it. I talk about when I talk to my students about the idea of things going viral or about getting customers to spread word of mouth about you. Your customers can be as happy as they want to be about your offering, but that doesn't mean they're going to talk to other people about it, because that's a separate action that requires a separate kind of benefit for them for doing that. And often those benefits are kind of relational. Like, I tell you about something that I love, not because I love the brand, but because I like you and I want you to benefit from this, right? So that's a different source of value. And so if you want something to go viral, you need to provide that secondary source of value. It's not enough to satisfy somebody as a customer. You now need to satisfy them as a collaborator as well. Yeah. And the same lessons apply to all of these. What are they going to get out of it? What is this brand that you want to partner with going to get out of it? What are these affiliates going to get out of it? Sometimes it's as simple as money, right? You're going to give them a cut of whatever they make. That's great. No problem with that at all. Other times it's something different, something more interesting. But if you haven't thought through that, none of these are going to work.
Sure. In fact, I should actually amend what I've just said, because it's not just win-win. It's win-win-win.
Yeah. Customer needs to get something out of it.
The customer needs to get something out of those things as well. And again, what you're trying to do is you're trying to make sure that 1 and 1 don't just make 2, it makes 3. And the customer gets that benefit as well. And I think in all of those, when done, in all of those examples, when done correctly, and the most successful, that's when you get the win-win-win, basically. So we hope that's been of use, John. Please let us know how it goes, mate. I'd be fascinated to see which route you take. And I would just reiterate what Ryan said at the top of the show, actually. Base it upon what the strategy is. Think about what the brand is that you're trying to create. And if you're going to go down this route, choose which one is going to be the most beneficial for you as part of your overall strategy. Great. We look forward to talking to you next week. Cheers. Thanks so much for watching. And if you enjoyed this video, please make sure you subscribe so you don't miss an episode.